Lithe was that old man, with the dense muscles of his small frame. These muscles were not large or protruding, but the strength was seen in the precision of his movements. The strength was there, but there was little to the man beyond bone and sinew. It was as if all had left him other than the absolutely vital. He seemed light in his movements, as if composed of air. If need be, though, there was a strength there that was as the limbs of the ancient wind-beaten trees of mountain tops. In his face there were the lines of age, but his eyes shone as if they were set in the face of a young child. His chest opened outward, as if his heart went forward before him. He was prone to smile, but there was something more than the physical expression of happiness. There was an aura about him of peace, as if a spring day was in constant dawn within him. He had left the old stump where he had been sitting on the moss and passing the stone between his fingers. Now he stood barefooted on the earth, solid in stature. Reaching upward, he felt his body. He did not think about feeling the body, but felt the body, the toes there, pressing against the ground, somewhat cold and moist. The legs caressed by the linen cloth of his tunic, knees bearing his weight without heaviness, not bent nor straight. In him he felt a sense of steadiness. He was at home. The tips of his fingers reached for the canopy, the origin of that golden green light that gleamed in pillars about the source, the sun. He felt the wind carry to him the story. He inhaled the wind, thanking it and exhaling it with the essence of himself, as if he had gone with it. In another moment he inhaled, entering that body again, and opened his eyes. The story that had been delivered to him on the wind had ended in silence.
You and all things are alike.
In the silence he heard a heartbeat. It was like a ripple spreading across the silence. Then came another heartbeat and another. Suddenly the pool of silence was full of movement, intersecting and intermingling vibrations. At first it seemed tangible to follow the pattern of each individual ripple, but soon the singular origins were obscured in the many. The sound was rippling through the world, echoing off all of its surroundings. He smiled, crying to himself and laughing. Whose is this heartbeat that I hear? Whose story have you told? Who are you? He asked. Silver tears fell from his eyes, and the ground below absorbed them into itself, thanking the sky for rain. Do not prevent the tear from falling, for that is what it seeks to do. It is not the emblem of sorrow alone, but is the essence of the soul. The voice, carried in the wind, came again, and one great ripple moved through all as the answer was given. I am. In that ripple there was stillness. Then the heartbeat followed. Again the silence was transformed into an ecstatic echo of ripples. William laughed again, and the storyteller laughed, like a tiny bell being rung gently. I am vibration, William laughed. Yes, so am I. I have a heartbeat. William felt his chest. Yes, so have I. Am I heartbeat? William smiled. In part, it seems. That I believe is true, for it seems I am many parts combined, but also I am each part. In all is vibration. If you are heartbeat, what living force do you support? I support the body that I am part of, the body that I am. So you are vibration, that forms parts, that form a whole. Yes, the whole universe, the voice laughed. Do you eat? Yes. Do you eat your feet? No, feet are not to eat. They are for walking in the garden to find food to eat. Is the garden not part of the whole universe? It is. All is part of the universe. Each part then plays a role? Yes, exactly. What role then do you play? I am to be. Where did you come from? I am vibration with no origin. But your heart, your feet, they were formed within a womb? Yes. How did you come to be born? Well, that is yet another story. So then, tell me that story of how you came to be born. In the forests of the ancient world, I was a nymph, one of the spirits that guides the natural process of composition and decomposition. Young as I was, we were taught by our elders, and each guided by an element of the planet, some of water, of air, or fire. But I was of earth. I rejoiced in my existence. We were taught each day our duties of custodianship over the natural processes of the world. We care energetically for all that exists in physical form. Like the enzymes that continuously guide the vital reactions of metabolism, we shaped the processes that were necessary to continue the harmonious cycle of life. All things are in balance. That was our greatest lesson, and all things arise from that balance. We were taught to see that balance is created by two forces that work in unison and harmony, but are inversely related, proportional, dynamic, and always in equilibrium. Even when there seemed to be some disharmonious or disproportionate force, there was always balance to follow that. This lesson we learned over and over again in infinite ways. We were young, though, and we sometimes wandered in the forest, observing and playing, like infant spirits of the world. Though earth I was, I found myself continuously at the banks of the puddles and streams. There I could look into the water and see myself reflected. Beyond that, I could see the world around me reflected. Beyond even that, I could see another world beneath that surface, the world of water. Hours I spent peering into each layer, either of reflection or into that aquatic realm. Earth is steady, with slow movement. Water is flowing and fast. The stars and planets, of course, guide us in our lives. I was born in the element of earth, but to water I was continuously drawn. I was attracted there. This, too, was a lesson in harmony. I was being attracted, and in my attraction I was to learn great lessons. There on the banks of those pools and streams, I often found that soul that became so familiar to me. I adored being with the water nymph that I came to know as my lover. There was a calming sense emanating from that spirit, like the unending murmur of water through the rocks of the stream bed. We were often in each other's company. Together we formed an ecosystem. At the banks of the waters where we met, there grew lush vegetation. We tended these areas continuously together with the greatest care, and our love manifested into delicate flowers, sturdy reeds, and great thirsty trees. We had birthed a sacred garden. Water is prone to movement. If it stays too long in one place, it is contaminated by all that is around it. To purify itself, it must flow its path through the world, the atmosphere, and return again. Earth, if in continual presence of water, becomes saturated and lacks air. There are few living things that can reside where water and earth reside permanently without movement. This was one of the most difficult lessons of balance that we were to learn. Kissing my lover, we parted ways again and again. Away from me the river flowed, and I watched the sky for rain. That lover always returned. As time passed, though, we sometimes spent great lengths of time apart. Sometimes our once lush garden that we tended in love became a desert where I wandered, dry and infertile. When the rain came again, I would follow the river to some new part of the world, and we would begin again. Slowly I was beckoned to the world's end, where the earth meets the sea. My lover would often tell me of the sea, where beneath the surface there existed an entire world, completely different than that one that was formed above. When I saw it, I was amazed. Instead of birds flying overhead, great giants glided in weightless passage through the sea. Light from the sun came down into those places in pillars and was refracted endlessly into rippling sprays of light that danced across the surfaces of branching corals and tall cylindrical sponges. Everything there, especially in the warm, shallow reefs of the tropics, danced continuously in a dazzling array of colors and textures. Flat, tall fish with vibrant yellows and jet black swam in a ballet about waving, soft corals. Their faces seemed puckered into a continuous grin. Some things lay on the bottom, so perfectly camouflaged that one could not tell stone from animal. Others buried themselves into the surface of old reefs and would slowly extend outward into a plume of feathers, only to vanish there and again when disturbed. Star-like creatures were moving slowly across all surfaces. Colorful were some, others carefully disguised. Some with many appendages, others with just 5 or 6. They moved on tiny tentacles that pulled them slowly towards some clam or other food, where they would push out their stomach and devour the morsel. Clams that survived these attacks grew to immense sizes. They were ancient beings that had become nearly completely embedded in the organisms that grew around them. Animals here had acquired strange and magnificent ways of giving life to their progeny. Some would split like a bacteria or a yeast. Others would deposit eggs, waiting for some mate to bring them the complementary information necessary to begin their development into new life forms. Some of these would guard these new creations with their life, sacrificing themselves to see only the young hatched safely, then died of starvation. Some fish with small beaks went about crunching as they cleaned algae from the underwater surfaces. Colorful slugs moved in many and strange ways, some with small wing-like appendages. Giant worms hid in the sand below, and tiny crevices were the home of octopi that would spray a jet of ink when alarmed and swim away, only to vanish in plain sight against some rock ahead. There were both tiny organisms and giants that inhabited this place. Some tiny organisms had learned to work in unison. Together they became giants. Corals, for example, gave birth to each new polyp individually, but worked together as a single organism. Fish moved together in great schools as if they were one. their shining scales flinging light in all directions as they moved through the ocean in search of food. Some, actually most places, were dark and mysterious, but even at the very depths of the deepest valleys beneath the surface, there was life and even light coming from that strange earth that resided there. Giants resided in this place, and sometimes luminous were they. They lived lives that they were perfectly formed for, because they evolved in such drastic environs. They rarely surfaced, if ever, and only the ocean knows the secrets of such places that are hidden from the eye of the sun. Each of the spirits of this world is guided in that place where balance is found therein. While I was amazed at the world my lover had to show me, I could not reside there. I returned to the banks of the sea. The sand there was full of salt. We strove together to grow our garden, but it proved difficult. Further inland, where there are areas where the river deposited fresh materials that had flowed down from the mountains. Here the soil was rich and deep. I enjoyed spending my time there. My lover visited often, and a kissing rain that met my lips and rejoicing. Life sprung up in full abundance in that place, and we met so often and for so long that we grew a magnificent garden. We passed around the sun again and again in blissful adoration and attentiveness to what we were creating. After many, many years, we were the custodians of an ancient forest where life dwelt in every possible position. Nothing here was sterile. In this place, life was continuously rearranging itself into unique forms. Our children were many and magnificent. It was not because of my lover and I alone that this came to be, but rather that we had found a point of incredible harmony. The sun, that fire in the heavens, called forth our progeny to continuously reach upward, and the wind, that fresh wind that comes continuously from either sea or mountain, gave the life of breath to all that inhabited the area. Together we had formed the Rainforest, and many spirits were born there and strove to maintain the delicate balance that allowed the forest to flourish. We were united in love of our creation. Many we were, with a shared purpose and passion. As I have said, the forest was ancient. It grew and regrew for ages, each destruction becoming a creation. And always there was abundance that begat abundance. The rain, though, did not come as often as it had once. This became apparent to me like the waking from a dream. One day, as the rain fell, instead of rejoicing as I met my lover, I withdrew. At the time I was confused. I did not understand why I was not overjoyed to receive the rain. By a stream we met to find what forces were at work within us. We understood that something had changed, but what was it? And why did we no longer rejoice in meeting? We did agree. My lover visited less often in that place we had created together. Something about the rain that fell when it did fall was acrid. It was not sweet as it had been before. It caressed the earth, but the earth cringed at receiving it. There was some change in it, as if balance had been lost. The tears we cried together were full of salt, and the ground where we sat became infertile from the many tears we shed there together. My lover held me to comfort me, but I withdrew. There was no comfort there. Our passion of creating life together was crippled by some force. Our affection only produced salty tears that damaged the forest that we had striven to create together. Many children had we, as the forest was endued with life abundant. Innumerable streams, springs, swamps, and bogs all brought the life-giving water, but the rain that my love brought, that fell from the sky, it was tainted by some bitterness. Something within me has changed, and my love only begets pain. I will go deep into myself, and there I will search for that thing, that aquifer that brings forth bitter rain." My lover said, flowing away from me. I went to the ocean side to wait. There I was dry, infertile, brackish. There was life, but I felt out of balance. "The one I love is like a river. When we met, they were bubbling up from the earth, a hot, stirring pool, a spring in the mountains. From there the pool filled, spilling down the face of the mountain, in the form of a lively little brook. They reached an impasse. Forming an ever-increasing pool, they grew to flow over the impasse, becoming a waterfall, spilling from the ledge above, thundering to the ground below, creeping through the forest at the foot of the mountains. Over time they gained speed, volume, momentum. They became a turbulent river and carved a deep valley. Then, reaching a great lake, they slowed, lingered, stayed a while. The lake and the dam could not keep them. From thence they meandered on, through strange and foreign lands. As they went, they collected knowledge of the world. As they went, they were polluted by mankind. They saw a great and many things. Those who traveled with them were moved by their beauty. Others turned aside by their fierce current. Some tried to move upstream or obstruct their path. Some adored the river, while others saw them as an obstacle. But rivers must always flow. Then they came to their outlet. They came to the ocean. Dirtied by their long travels, they met in black brackish waters. They became a part of the great sea. They explored their depths and wondered at their mysteries, their glorious inhabitants. They saw great lands near and far, but could never view more than their seaward shore. One hot day they stirred themselves upright. The sun, smiling down, soaked them up, turning them into vapor. They looked down from the clouds and saw the entire earth. The cloud that they had become grew heavy, though. One dark evening, while they hung over the mountains, they fell as rain to the ground below. Ah, and here I stand in the rain. I feel them soak my being. My love has returned again, refined and distilled, refreshed and renewed. The rain runs down the hill and joins the brook. Forever changing they are. I was confused, for I had witnessed the tadpoles emerge from the puddles of my forest 1,000 times. They lost their tails and knew exactly as they were to do. It was a frog that lived in a world not water or land, but a mixture of the two. How could the tadpole be so confident of the new surroundings? Yet I know not where to begin. Sometimes we think that we are higher, yet we are slave to whims and curiosity. Would we trade all our glorious abilities to wander and the accompanying insecurities to live as the frog? So sure is he of life that he will not question losing the tadpole's tail and licking up flies on the land. For some time I stayed on the shore. Cold and battering was the salty wind, and the sun seemed to burn instead of warm. I wandered into the dark forest that my love and I had created together. I wandered into the earth. Perhaps there, while wandering, I would find some answer. As I transversed, I felt a change in the air around me. There was a heaviness to that element that was uncharacteristic. Smoke, the product of some far fire, was filling the sky. Fire is not uncommon or unwelcome, but there was the same bitterness in this smoke as had come in the rain. I sought its source. There in the forest I found great metal beasts that moved across the land, crushing all in their path. My children lay beneath, crushed and prematurely decomposing. Nothing was left to allow them to recompose into the force that had borne them. They lay on the earth as if our years of love and attendance had gone in a moment. These machines that moved across the land, they smelt of ancient destruction. They were run by the collection of life far beneath the soil that had accumulated during the great catastrophes of the planet. Now, unleashed, the spirit of catastrophe lived again, plaguing the earth with that unresolved sorrow that slept buried there. Unbalanced and disharmonious, the catastrophe was unleashed, but by what force? In the metal beast, like a prison, man sat enslaved by the machine. I could see that the eyes no longer saw the forest, but only duty to serve some purpose. The sensitive body of each man was covered in threads produced by the catastrophic collection of life they had released from beneath the ground, their feet clad in it, covered in steel, their hands gloved by it, their lungs filled with the poisonous gas, and the forest crushed beneath them. The catastrophe had crept into and surrounded the minds and bodies of men. I could do nothing but weep and moan, as if all life was being drawn out from me. Man was no stranger to the forest. He himself is a child of earth, the custodians of the forest. Long have they been in communication with us, the spirits, and all other children of the planet. Long have we worked together to create and maintain. Now the dark forces of calamity had them within their grasps. But how was such filth released from its derelict slumber? Why was such a force being drawn out from the earth's heart? I fell upon the earth and the machines passed over me. I merged with the life there and shared the pain. The acrid rain fell from the smoke-filled sky, and my lover was there with me. We lay together, writhing in misery. In the journey into the depths of the ocean, my lover had flowed through contaminated waters, filled with the suffocating toxic liquids that spilt from these metallic beasts. Joining the ocean, my love saw the water there polluted with the filth. The children of the ocean, sensitive and fragile, withered in the rapidly changing waters. The whale, in all its strength, depends on the most sensitive and tiny organisms for survival. Now that bellowing voice was a harbinger of drastically changing tides. Decay ran rampant through the ecosystems of both earth and water. The water that rose in evaporation from the earth, distilled and purified, fell through poisonous gas before it met the ground below. Fire without control devoured the fuel that it had found, consuming all that it met in its path. The fire moved across the land, and water moved away from there. No trees were left to call back the clouds. The laws of balance and harmony guide us all. For each force there is some equal or opposite. A force cannot be stopped without first understanding that thing that is its source. If it is man that awakened this force, it is within man we must resolve some disharmonious energy. But what can we, the spirits of the rainforest, do to understand and heal man? Only humans understand what it is to be human. That is the nature of the universe. So we must leave our creation and become man in order to understand the forces at work within him. So my love and I became human and joined the consciousness of mankind. The trees here grow weak without us. Like a bone, dry and brittle, they will break. We are the guardians of our creation. We have seen it come and go and change over the years, but we cannot stay here to fight this battle. The power to direct the future has been put in the hands of man. We must go into the world of men and show them again who they are. We must awaken them. They are made of the dust of stars, and the energy that vibrates within them is the same that feeds the leaf of the fern. They are made of the dust of stars, and the energy that vibrates within them is the same that feeds the leaf of the fern. The great sun gave this world a soul, and man no longer worships the sun, nor the moon, nor the earth. He sees himself as a distant part. He is delusional, forgetting that he is the same as the rock and the tree. He does not see that he relies on these, his kindred, for life and meaning. Yes, I am the spirit of the rainforest. I am. But so are you. We gave our spirit to man so he could see our dilemma. We became man so we could understand what is in his heart and why. We now live in all of man and seek our return to the forest. The children of the forest can only exist within the forest when their spirits are not needed to exist within and among men as a means of deterring the destruction that man brings. We awaken in them and dwell within. We must understand what it is that has driven man down this path of destruction. We must dwell within all of mankind and unite their understanding once more. We must understand what force is born in their hearts, and from that understanding create the balm, the antidote. As a river has innumerable tributaries, to tell you one story, I must tell you many. To understand the need of humanity, all must share their story. Then together we can write what is to follow. I would like to be called the story keeper. I think that stories unite us and help us see through the illusion that we often are so obsessed with. When we see it as a story, we see it as it is, like words written carefully on delicate paper or fast scribbles on rough cardboard. I want to tell you stories that are real and that are imaginary. I want to tell you my story and the stories of others, the stories that are our daily lives and the stories that are but dreams within ourselves. I want to show you how much they intertwine and how they manifest who we believe we are. But remember, I am only the story keeper just as much as you are. We're all writing stories. We must all tell our part to form the whole.